All right, so you guys really went for it this time, huh? With this request, I got to say, even just thinking about John Wayne Gacy, it it really gets under my skin.
Well, he's one of those figures, where it's not just the label serial killer. It's the whole picture,
Like,
man.
that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, part of it is the contrast. Like this seemingly average guy.
Right.
A contractor involved in like local politics, even a freaking clown for kids' parties.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, what is so disturbing about Basie is the stark contrast.
Right.
You have the seemingly average guy, right?
Yeah.
Contractor involved in his community, like you said, doing all this normal stuff.
Right.
And then this like abyss of depravity hidden beneath.
And the killer clown thing just adds like a whole other layer to
Oh,
it.
absolutely. It
Yeah.
weaponizes something that should be joyful
Yes.
and innocent and
Right.
fun and twists it into something truly terrifying.
And knowing that there were at least 33 victims,
Yeah.
mostly young men and boys,
Hmm.
like that in itself is just, it's a nightmare scenario.
Absolutely. And to think that most of those bodies were found under his own house. Like he was living on top of this secret graveyard of his own making.
So for this deep dive, we're not just cataloging the crimes, right? It's
Yeah.
like, how did this even happen?
Right.
Like, how did John Wayne Gacy build this life,
Yeah.
this facade, while committing such unspeakable acts?
Well, to understand a darkness like that, you have to look at the roots.
Yeah.
And in Gacy's case, his childhood was, well, I guess the word turbulent doesn't even really begin to cut it. We're
Right.
talking about an alcoholic, abusive father, the
Well-
kind of environment that can really, just fracture a young psyche.
But we're not armchair psychologists here, right? Like, plenty of people have
Yeah.
awful childhoods,
Of course.
and they don't become serial killers.
Absolutely. It's never a simple equation like that. But, there are experts who believe that that kind of intense childhood trauma can really warp your coping mechanisms and lead, and in Gacy's case, maybe it manifested as this need for control,
Okay.
for power.
So he builds this outwardly successful life as a way to like almost overcompensate.
Potentially.
Like he's desperately trying to create order out of the chaos that he's in.
I think that's a valid way to look at it. He had his own business, was very active in the community, even held a position in the local Democratic Party.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was constructing this normal persona,
Right.
this mask, to hide the darkness underneath.
And the creepiest part is for a while it worked.
Yeah,
But there were warning signs though, right? Like,
Yeah.
wasn't there a sodomy conviction back in 68?
there was. He served time for assaulting a teenage boy.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a pretty glaring red flag. A moment where intervention might have been possible, but the system failed and the darkness was allowed to fester.
So he gets out of prison, returns to Chicago, remarries. You'd think maybe he'd try to put it all behind him, right?
Right.
But then between 72 and 78, things take this terrifying turn.
Yeah. This is where the facade really starts to crack. And the true extent of Gacy's depravity becomes horrifyingly clear. His MO was disturbingly consistent.
Okay.
Luring young men with promises of work or using this magic trick with handcuffs as a ruse.
Like handcuffs? Like as part of a clown act or something?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's incredibly disturbing.
It is. He twisted something mundane, even playful, into a tool of control and terror.
Yeah.
Imagine the sheer terror that his victims must have felt.
Right.
Trapped, realizing that this friendly facade was a lie.
It sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then to think that he buried most of them right under his house.
I know.
26 bodies in the crawl space.
It's almost too grotesque to comprehend.
Yeah.
It suggests a profound detachment from reality and a complete lack of empathy for his victims.
Right.
And not only the brutality of the murders themselves, but this need to keep them close.
Right.
Almost like they were possessions.
And then there's the chilling possibility that there were even more victims.
Right.
Gacy himself claimed that he might have killed as many as 45.
It's a number that's really difficult to verify, but it speaks to the potential scope of his crimes. The fact that not all of the victims were identified adds another layer of tragedy.
Right.
A haunting reminder that some families may never have answers.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it leads to the event that finally unraveled Gacy's whole twisted world.
Yeah.
The disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Peast in 1978,
Right.
a seemingly ordinary teenager who just vanished without a trace.
Last seen at a pharmacy where chillingly Gacy had been spotted just moments before.
This wasn't just another missing person case.
No.
This was the beginning of the end for John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, it set the stage for an investigation that would unearth a depth of horror that no one could have anticipated. And we'll delve into that chilling chapter in part 2 of our deep dive, Robert Piest's disappearance.
Yeah, it was like pulling a thread that unraveled this whole tapestry of lies that Gacy had built.
Yeah, I can only imagine like the tension ratcheting up as investigators started digging into his life, like every new piece of information just adding to this sense of dread. Oh, absolutely. And when they got the search warrant for his house, that was the real turning point.
Right.
When police arrived, they were met with this overwhelming stench of decay.
Ugh.
It must have been like a punch to the gut, you know?
Hmm.
The realization that this wasn't just a missing person case.
Right.
This was something far more sinister.
It's like that smell, almost like the evil in the house was so potent it could be physically sensed.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a nightmare scenario.
And then the horror of the discovery itself. 29 bodies in the crawl space.
Oh my God.
Some wrapped in plastic, others just piled on top of each other. It's almost beyond comprehension.
It's like something out of a horror movie, but this was real life.
Right.
Real families whose lives were just shattered.
And the discoveries didn't end there. 4 more bodies were pulled from the Des Plaines River.
Jeez.
Gacy had disposed of some victims there, likely in a desperate attempt to cover his tracks as the net closed in.
So his carefully crafted facade was finally crumbling, and the true monster was revealed.
Exactly. With the sheer volume of evidence against him, Gacy's trial began in early 1980. It became this media frenzy, the nation transfixed by the unfolding details of his crimes.
And his defense strategy was pretty shocking, wasn't it? He claimed to have multiple personalities, saying that it wasn't actually him who committed the murders.
Right. It was a desperate attempt to escape accountability, to paint himself as a victim rather than a perpetrator.
Right.
He claimed these alternate personalities took control committing the crimes without his knowledge.
It sounds almost too absurd to believe,
Yeah.
like something out of a bad movie.
Yeah.
But did that defense ever actually work in court?
Well, the multiple personalities defense, or what's now known as dissociative identity disorder, is incredibly complex
Right.
and controversial.
Sure.
Very rarely successful,
Okay.
especially in a case as clear-cut as Gacy's. I mean, the jury saw right through it. They recognized him as a cunning and manipulative individual fully responsible for his actions.
And the weight of the evidence was just overwhelming. 33 counts of murder, sexual assault, and child indecency.
It's staggering.
It's just staggering.
The trial exposed the true depths of Gacy's depravity,
Right.
the sheer scale of his crimes. The sentence was inevitable, death by lethal injection.
And after 14 years on death row, John Wayne Gacy was executed in 1994.
It seems like justice was served. But in a case like this, can there ever truly be closure?
That's the haunting question, isn't it? While Gacy's story ends there, the ripple effects of his actions continue to haunt those left behind.
Of course.
For the families of the victims, the pain is immeasurable.
Uh-huh.
They lost sons, brothers, friends, their lives stolen in such a brutal and senseless way.
And for some families, there's that added torment of not knowing.
Right.
Not all of Gacy's victims were ever identified.
Exactly.
The uncertainty, the lack of closure, it's an open wound that may never truly heal.
Absolutely. And then there's the trauma experienced by the entire community,
Wow.
the chilling realization that someone they knew, someone they may have even trusted, was capable of such monstrous acts. It shatters your whole sense of safety,
It does.
leaving a community grappling with fear, suspicion, and that lingering question of, how could this happen here?
It's a horrifying reminder that darkness can lurk beneath the most ordinary facades.
Yeah, the guy you see at the grocery store, the friendly neighbor, anyone could be hiding a terrifying secret.
But amidst all the darkness and despair, there is a glimmer of hope. You mentioned Jack Merrill earlier, one of the few who survived an encounter with Gacy.
Right.
Merrill's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. He was abducted, tortured, went through a horrific ordeal, but somehow he managed to escape.
His testimony must have been incredibly powerful.
Oh, absolutely.
A chilling glimpse into the mind of a predator and the depths of his cruelty.
Merrill's account is a vital piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
It offers a first-hand perspective of Gacy's brutality, the terror he inflicted on his victims,
Right.
but it also underscores the possibility of survival, the strength that can emerge from even the darkest experiences.
It's a powerful reminder that even though evil exists in this world, so does hope and resilience. But the question remains, how do we prevent such horrors from happening again? What lessons can we learn from this dark chapter in human history?
Those are the questions that linger, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they lead us into a crucial discussion about the societal and systemic failures that allowed Gacy to operate for so long. But we'll delve into those critical questions in part 3 of our deep dive.
I mean, it's just mind-boggling how Gacy managed to maintain this double life for so long.
Right.
On the surface, he was like this respected member of the community,
Yeah,
but underneath, there was this abyss of darkness.
it's true.
How did he pull it off?
Well, Gacy was a master manipulator. I
Uh-huh.
mean, he understood human nature. He knew how to present himself in a way that would disarm people and earn their trust.
Mm,
He was charming, outgoing, always willing to lend a hand. He deliberately cultivated this image of respectability,
right.
using it as a shield to hide his true nature.
So it wasn't just a matter of him being good at hiding the bodies. He was actively constructing a persona that was designed to deflect suspicion.
Exactly. And that's what makes this case so unsettling,
Right.
because it challenges our assumptions about good and evil,
Yeah.
about our ability to judge character based on appearances.
Mm-hmm.
Gacy reminds us that evil can wear a friendly face,
Right.
that it can lurk in the most unexpected places.
Okay, but surely someone must have noticed something was off,
Yeah?
right? Like, were there any missed red flags? Anything that, in hindsight, seems like a glaring warning
Oh,
sign?
there were absolutely warning signs.
Like what?
I mean, his 1968 conviction for sodomy,
Right.
that should have been a major red flag.
Huge.
But somehow it was largely ignored or dismissed.
Yeah.
He served a short sentence, and upon his release, he was able to seamlessly reintegrate into society.
God, that's terrifying.
It is.
It suggests like a systemic failure,
Yeah.
almost a reluctance to acknowledge the potential for evil, especially when it comes disguised as normalcy.
And it highlights the need for greater vigilance, for taking accusations seriously, and for implementing more robust background checks.
Right.
We need systems that don't allow predators to slip through the cracks.
So what can we do on an individual level? Are there any warning signs, any behavioral cues that might tip us off to someone like Gacy?
Well, it's not about becoming paranoid or suspicious of everyone we meet,
Right.
but we can be more attuned to inconsistencies
Okay.
between someone's words and actions.
Hmm.
Pay attention to gut feelings. If something feels off, it probably is.
Trust your instincts.
Yeah,
Don't dismiss those nagging doubts just because someone seems charming or successful.
exactly. And most importantly, I think we need to create a culture where people feel empowered to speak up
Okay.
if they see something that seems wrong.
Right.
Too often, warning signs are ignored or dismissed out of fear or social pressure.
It's like the see something, say something campaign,
Yeah,
but applied to potentially predatory behavior.
precisely. It's about creating a safety net,
Right.
a community where people are vigilant without being paranoid, where potential threats are identified and addressed before they escalate.
It sounds like a difficult balance to strike,
It is.
but an incredibly important one.
Absolutely. Gacy's case is a stark reminder that evil doesn't always wear a menacing mask. Sometimes it hides behind a smile, a handshake, a carefully constructed facade of normalcy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the chilling world of John Wayne Gacy, it feels like the biggest takeaway is this heightened awareness, this understanding that darkness can lurk in the most unexpected places.
I think that's a good way to put it. We need to be more attuned to subtle signs, more willing to speak up when something feels wrong, and more committed to holding individuals and institutions accountable when they fail to protect the vulnerable.
Because ultimately, the fight against evil isn't just about catching the monsters after they committed their crimes.
Right.
It's about preventing those crimes from happening in the first place. And that requires a collective effort, a vigilance grounded in knowledge, and a commitment to creating a world where darkness has fewer places to hide. Well, this deep dive has been unsettling, to say the least, and incredibly insightful. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And if you're interested in learning more, there are tons of resources available on John Wayne Gacy, the psychology of serial killers, and the impact of trauma. Remember, knowledge is power, and understanding the darkness can help us shed light on the path towards a brighter future.